Hello, everybody. At this time, we are talking about an autonomous investment. An autonomous investment occurs when a government or other body makes an investment in a foreign country without regard to its level of economic growth or the prospects for that investment to generate positive returns. These investments are made primarily for purposes of geopolitical stability, economic aid, improving infrastructure, national or individual security, or humanitarian goals. Autonomous investment is a stabilizing economic force. And then we move to importance of autonomous investment. The first, economic stability. Autonomous investments maintain consistent spending during economic slowdowns, helping cushion the impact and prevent severe recessions. Second, crisis management. They act as stabilizers which support demand and soften the impact of economic shocks. Third, long-term growth. They fund important infrastructure such as roads, power plants, and railways, increasing future productivity. Fourth, multiplier effect. Money from this investment circulates through the economy, creating jobs and boosting other economic activities. Fifth, public welfare. These investments improve access to education, healthcare, and sanitation. And then we move to factors affecting autonomous investment. Technically, autonomous investments are not affected by external factors. In reality, however, several factors can affect them. For example, interest rates have a significant impact on investment made in an economy. High interest rates can tamp down on consumption, while low interest rates can spur it. In turn, this affects spending within an economy. Trade policies between countries can also affect autonomous investment made by their citizens. If a producer of cheap goods imposes duties on exports, then it would have the effect of making finished products for outside geographies more expensive. Governments can impose controls on an individual's autonomous investments through taxes too. If a basic household good is taxed and no substitutes are available, then the autonomous investment pertaining to it may decrease. And then we move to differences between autonomous investment and induced investment. The first, an investment is considered autonomous if it does not fluctuate in response to changes in revenue, interest, or profit rates. Induced investments, on the other hand, has a positive relationships with output, profit, and income levels. And then second, the demand for products and services among consumers is unaffected by autonomous investments. On the contrary, it is affected by it. In contrast, demand is one of the elements that affect induced investment. meaning that if consumer demand increase, investment is undertaken to offer the goods and services needed to meet the demand. And then third, on aggregate demand, autonomous investment has a secondary effect. Businesses that invest independently boost the economy by increasing demand for capital products. Contrary to this, induced investment has a direct effect on overall demand. Businesses generate a multiplier effect when they expand production in response to rising demand by making additional investments in projects. And then fourth, the national income is strongly correlated with induced investment, whereas autonomous investment is unrelated to it. Since autonomous investment is unaffected or unmodified by changes in income, induced investment, on the other hand, tends to rise or fall as a result of income fluctuations. And then fifth, government investment is autonomous and focuses on social welfare. In contrast, induced investment is induced investment is done so to make money. It is also possible to see that the investor is motivated to invest by the potential for profit. And then how autonomous investment functions in an economy. Autonomous investments are made because they are deemed as basic necessities to individual, organizational, or national well-being, health, and safety, and are executed even when levels of disposable income for investments are zero or close to zero. Autonomous investments include inventory replenishment, government investments in infrastructure projects such as roads or highway, and other investments that maintain or enhance a country's economic potential. They do not increase in response to higher gross domestic product or GDP growth, or shrink in response to economic contractions, indicating that they are not motivated by profit, but rather by the goal of improving societal welfare. And then we move to characteristics of autonomous investment. The first, income inelastic. It remains constant regardless of changes in gross domestic product or national income. Second, economic stabilizer. Helps the cushion economies during recessions by maintaining consistent public spending. Third, welfare driven, not influenced by the expectation of direct financial returns. And then we move to examples of autonomous investment. The first, about infrastructure, government funding for roads, highways, bridges, and dams. Second, crisis management, emergency inventory replenishments or disaster relief spending. Third, public services, constructing public schools, hospitals, and sanitation facilities. And then how do the autonomous investment influence aggregate demand? The first, stable demand. Because autonomous investment doesn't depend on income levels, it continues regardless of recessions or booms. This helps balance out extreme cycles. Second, ripples benefit. The spending doesn't stop with one round. Workers and firms receiving this money reinvest or spend it, creating additional layers of demand. I think this is enough. Thanks for watching.